We were really busy, not very efficient. We see 120 patients a day. Probably 20 to 30 of them were repair visits. 30% of them were retainer checks.
We haven't been afraid to fail. And because of that kind of mindset, that really led to, I think, I would say hyper efficiencies in each of the technologies that we've used.
A lot of people will equate efficiency with skipping steps. Really not the case at all. Anything that we've employed, it's always been with the patient in mind and to improve what we are already doing.
I'm Dr. Scott Law, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Smile Doctors Off Mute podcast. I want to welcome Damon DeArment and Lill to the Smile Doctors Off Mute podcast today. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you.
Okay, cool. So let's start off from the beginning. So how did you guys arrive to become partners in the first place?
I was lucky enough to join a practice in my hometown in Winchester, Virginia. Cool. I actually worked at this practice when I was a senior in high school, and then I continued working through the practice throughout my dental school career and my orthodontic career. And then the orthodontist asked me to join him in practice in 1996. And Winchester, Virginia is about an hour west of DC, and it's been a growing area because the population of the Northern Virginia, DC area is moving west to get out of the city. So the area is growing, and it was a great opportunity. We were real busy as we could be. And the senior doctor that was there was really starting to kind of settle down in the retirement mode. And I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit overwhelmed at the time. We were really busy and not very efficient, and we'll get into that later. Yeah. But we weren't very efficient, and we were growing, and I really needed some help. And so I reached out to one of our local reps through 3M Unitech to find someone in the residency program at MCV that might be willing to come to Winchester, Virginia. Winchester is a great community to grow up in. It's a smaller town, and it's not really attractive to a lot of people coming right out of probably the residencies. They want to go to the big cities. They want to go to the coastal areas. Mm-hmm. So to find someone willing to come to Winchester was going to be challenging. But I was lucky enough that our 3M rep had communication with the VCU program, and they found someone like Dan that was willing to. He was from New York originally, but wasn't set on going back to New York, and was willing to take a look at our practice. And I was very fortunate that he was was willing to talk to me, and really liked the practice. And we were definitely different people in some respects, but I think it was a great thing that we are different people, and we really are yin and yang to each other. I guess I'm more of the quick start, and Dan's more the fact finder in the group. So it was a really good relationship right off the bat. So
I totally agree. I think when you get a partnership that's that way, like in my own marriage, right? So my wife is a ready, fire, aim person, and I am a ready, aim, and I don't know, it'd take me forever to pull the trigger. So we do even each other out. And so I see you guys much the same. That's how you've arrived at to have the practice that you do, which is just awesome. So Dan, tell us about your perspective. So you joined in what year, and what did you see in the practice? Why'd you want to join?
Yeah, well, my route to get to this point was a little bit different. Coming from New York, and then traveling to Virginia for schooling, and trying to decide what I wanted to do, and didn't know where I was going to go at that point. Really was just kind of fortunate, like Damon said, had the opportunity to explore, a chance to stay in Virginia. Not necessarily having to start a practice myself, but it seemed like a great opportunity. I really respected the rep that Damon referenced that kind of got us in touch with each other.
Who's the rep?
And that was Paul Morrison.
Right on. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. We decided to meet. I'll be honest, and I've said this before, I didn't even know where Winchester was. When we got together and started to make some conversation, and it just got to meet each other, it was that was meant to be. And really super fortunate that Damon and the team welcomed me to Winchester and Shenandoah Valley Orthodontics.
That's awesome.
Actually, we had a different name at that point, but it was a really welcome place to enter. They had a great practice going, solid in the community, and they welcomed me as well. And I think the synergy between me coming in and learning from what they've built and what I could bring and take a look at all the new things that we could take advantage of for our orthodontic patients. It was an awesome thing.
That's awesome. What year was that you guys partnered?
Yes, that was 2005.
2005. Awesome. That's awesome. So you guys are known for your efficiencies, for the way that you operate your practice and run it. Damon, you hinted a little bit that it wasn't always that way. That you guys have evolved over time. Tell us a little bit about that. How'd you guys arrive to want to be more efficient, and how that was a service to the patients?
Well, it really arrived because it was an ultimate need of not only our practice, but our own personal health. I will say, when I joined the practice in '96, we were still banding premolars and molars. We had brackets on incisors. And I tell you, the work was very difficult. We tied in every bracket with a ligature wire. We used a lot of auxiliaries, a lot of RPEs, a lot of headgears, lip bumpers, a lot of things that were difficult for not only ourselves, our team to place, but also for the patients as well. So it was you went home at the end of the day very exhausted from your work.
Right.
And I remember at the time we used to brag at meetings about how many patients we saw in a day. Like that was something to measure. We see 120 patients a day. Well, if you break down what those patients were, probably 20 to 30 of them were repair visits. 30% of them were retainer checks. Very, very inefficient. So you were busy treating the patients that you had, but you weren't working on the growth of your practice. It was growing organically, but we also had patients waiting 2 to 3 months to get into our practice, because all we had time for was two new patient exams at the end of the morning and 2 at the end of the evening, one for each doctor. So we were just overwhelmed. And as I mentioned, my senior partner, he was getting close to retirement, wasn't working as much, and really all that fell on me. And I wasn't sleeping well. I was exhausted. I couldn't give my family the needs that they had. I'm a very young family, 4 kids. And I just said, I knew something had to change. And when I reached out to find Dan, it was just a blessing that he was willing to come to Winchester and join our practice. And he was just the perfect fit because he was very analytic, looked at things very carefully, and I knew we could pick this practice apart and establish some efficiencies. And we start right away. We decided to look at every single protocol and procedure in our practice. The first thing we did, I remember, was we looked at every procedure and timed it, because we would have for an arch wire visit, it was a half hour. 2 arch wires was an hour. Very, very inefficient. So we timed each procedure so that we could template our schedule, not only so we could make sure that we had the number of appointments we needed, but also to really template in there the new patient exams we needed to grow the practice.
Wow. How'd you guys arrive at that? Did you guys have consultants or was it study clubs, or did you guys come up with that on your own?
I think we've had, as far as consultants go, I think we've taken a lot from a lot of different views, which has been one of the great things.
Sure.
I think that, before I got there, I think Damon had used a few consultants, and I think the best thing to do is to take a little piece from each one.
Right.
As we've kind of journeyed through this, we found that each of our processes have been needing something else, and each brought a unique perspective on that for us. Anything from, you talk about just charts, paper charts, to digital. Our practice management system. We had I don't know how many processes it was, Damon, 5-step to get a new patient to start. We brought them in for the consult, then we brought them in for records. Then, so it was a lot going on, but we took a little bit from each consultant. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the cool things that, where we are right now, taking all that knowledge, one of the cool things is that here we are with Smile Doctors. I feel like we've got all this wealth of knowledge and all the partners that we have. And I think that's the sharing atmosphere that we have. I think that's what's it's making us and driving us to be even more efficient in all these different areas of our practice. So sky's the limit, and it's fun to have that opportunity.
Well, I have such admiration for practices like you guys that have come from inefficiency, recognize you need to change, and then had the leadership to lead your team and implement on all these things. They're like you said, Dan, that the ideas are all out there and they're everywhere. They're readily available. We all know the things that we would need to do to make our practice more efficient. Conceptually, it's a matter of how do we implement and do them day in, day out, and get your team so that they're the ones who are driving it and they're the ones who are wanting it. Because if it's just us asking, begging, forcing, it doesn't work. Instead, what's been your approach? So you guys have clearly been successful in this to get your team to buy in to be able to drive it that way.
Well, I think the first thing is one of the benefits I think of a partnership is you have a little more courage, if you will, to try new things. I think when you're a sole practitioner, you tend to stay, you know what you know, and you know it works, and you're a little afraid to try new technologies and do new protocols. But having Dan there with me, we were able to come together and say, listen, we may fail in some of these things, but let's be willing to try new things. And I think once we saw the efficiencies that were gained in some of the things we tried, and our team bought into those, they weren't afraid of change any longer. I remember changing to a self-ligating bracket, and that was huge for us because no longer we have to tie those arch wires in. That was very time consuming. And the only downside was it was called the Damon bracket. And my partner at the time, his wife had thought that here's this guy coming into the practice and he's changing every practice. He's got his own bracket. And I assured her that it was not my bracket. If it was, I'd be out on the lecture circuit. But, it was actually my partner's idea to do the Damon bracket. But that was a time saver. And then when Invisalign came into being, we were one of the first providers in Virginia to get certified to do Invisalign in 1999.
Wow.
I would say we didn't really use it that much because at that time, all they had was elliptical attachments and the plastics weren't great. The quality of the results weren't there. So we really didn't use that to its advantage. Now, let's fast forward another 10 years. Dan and I started dabbling more into more class 2 cases, severe crowding, extraction cases, and we became more confident in our own skill set to treat most things with Invisalign. And I think really that change from the analog world to the digital world, from fixed appliances to aligners, has really gained the most efficiency in our practice. We had gaps in our schedule where we never had before because we weren't seeing as many patients. So that really led to a huge breakthrough.
That's beautiful. I know a lot of practices will often add technology almost as a marketing differentiator, right? But all they end up doing is just adding more and more cost to the cases, not even necessarily even a higher level of service or outcomes for the patient. Dan, how have you approached it so that when you do bring on technology, there's an offset on the P&L or there's some other advantage? What's your mindset been on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think any technology that we bring in or we're thinking about bringing in has to be patient-centric. It really does. The dollars are important too. And as Damon said, I am the fact finder. Really like to crunch those numbers to see where the return is on that. But it's got to start with being patient-centric. From there, I think we've always tried to use whatever technology it is, and it's got to be used to the fullest. I think we've always gone all in. We haven't dabbled in certain things. We haven't been afraid to fail. And because of that kind of mindset, that really led to, I think, I would say hyper efficiencies in each of the technology that we've used. But at the end of the day, if you do that, I think the return on it is going to be improved. You got to have your eye on it. You got to check it out at the end of the day. You got to have the vision to see where we're going with it and what the bottom line is. And in the end, if the patient's happy, the practice is going to be happy, the team is happy, we're going to have a profitable practice as well. So that kind of comes at the end. But I think it all comes from really utilizing everything to the fullest and being an expert in whatever technology it is that we use.
A lot of people will equate efficiency with skipping steps. And that's really not the case at all. Anything that we've employed, whether techniques or if technology, it's always been with the patient in mind and to improve what we are already doing. Josh Adcox talks a lot about doing more with less but better, and that less is in less time and less effort. So yes, you can be efficient and you can still do things better than you ever have. Our quality of treatment today, working less hard, is much better than it ever was in my career.
I agree with you. I think you alluded to it, that early on you did a lot of complex cases with a lot of auxiliaries, and I know as a patient, that was miserable for me. Right. The more complex the treatment is, just more that can break, that can go wrong. You mentioned 20 to 30% of your appointments were repairs. I know that's miserable. It's miserable for the patient. It's miserable for the treating doctor, the team, everybody. We don't want those to derail us as we're going through treatment. So as such, you guys are now known for one of the top Invisalign providers in the world. And especially when it comes to phase 1, treating adolescents and mixed dentition. So you guys have really swung the other way to where you're just hyper efficient, providing this top level of service to patients using perhaps the top level of technology in order to treat these cases. So I hear that, and I hear that your general dentist and your referring network is also extremely pleased with it. Talk. How have you guys done that? How have you gotten the dentists on board with that type of treatment?
Well, good.
I was going to say all this starts with education. Aligners and our success with that started with adults, kind of trickled down to teens, and then we found this age group of patients that truly is and we say this all the time, they're the best patients to work with. They're happy. They're used to, or at least their parents are used to having all this difficult treatment, very complicated treatment, analog, that now, with our confidence and our skills with using aligners in the first phase, it's a completely different experience. It took us a while to really kind of believe and see that, the aligners and a properly planned setup is going to, give this patient a better experience, but also the results that Damon and I wanted to see. And, from that, it builds into this excitement and I think understanding from the community, the parents, the referring docs. Some of them are still kind of stuck in their old ways. They don't think that we can move teeth with aligners, especially in a younger patient. But they're not. Usually, the referring doctors, they're not seeing these patients at a young age. When they're taking these patients, I should say taking them, we're seeing a lot more that are using aligners nowadays. They're seeing them in their teen years. But as we all know, we were trained. The AAO recommends, see them at 7, 8, or 9. Have a plan. If we can see these patients and head off some situations, make it a much easier, more predictable path for them, this is going to be a way for us to recreate and to confidently show how these patients can be treated and give them the results that in the end we think are not only what we've done in the past, but even better.
Yeah, I agree.
I will say, we are very lucky in our small community that early treatment has not been taboo as it is in a lot of places. Of course, coming out of residency, you don't get a whole lot of training in early treatment at all. So, you still see those habits perpetuated in a lot of our practices today. Is still there's not a lot of people doing early treatment. When I joined the practice here in 1996, my former partner, he actually was a big believer in early treatment for whatever reason. He got onto that. And so it spread through our community, and it got to the point where it wasn't that the AAO recommended that people be seen by 7, is the parents were seeing it, and other kids in their classrooms and their friends were in early treatment, and they didn't want to miss the boat with their child. And so we've always had this stream of patients at an early age coming to us for screening. So we've been blessed with that. And then, now really about 40% of our practice is probably early treatment, which is a really high percentage compared to most practices. So we were, even when we moved more into Invisalign in 2015, 18 or so, we were still that analog phase one practice with a lot of lip bumpers, headgears, RPEs. So once we started dabbling, and I hate the word dabbling because we're not dabblers usually, but we started, dipping our feet in the water on this first, we realized, like Dan said, these were the greatest patients. They were so compliant. And if you ever want to see a ClinCheck, come to fruition exactly how you see it on the screen, treat a first patient because they wear it. They don't make the excuses like teens and adults not to wear it. And you're going to see that ClinCheck of yours really look exactly like you set it up. So, and the kids just love it. I mean, I don't really have any patients coming in today that ask for metal braces. They all want Invisalign. They want to be able to eat what they want. They want that just the comfort that, as is not there with fixed appliances, especially in there's small mouths. So now we're pretty much 80% share of chair or more with Invisalign with not only our teen and adults, but also our kids. And that number is going up every day.
What do you say to parents? Because I've had this question. What do you say to parents who say, "Wow, I don't know why it feels like I'm getting braces twice or treatment twice," and kids are getting treatment at a younger and younger age? What do you guys say to that?
I really think it's about talking to them about building a foundation, making a predictable path. Damon and I have both been doing this for a long time, and I think we've seen how cases that either have gotten missed early on or have been treated inefficiently, these cases aren't going to show the same kind of results that somebody, if we plan a two-phase approach. I don't like to look at it as having orthodontics twice. It's really about using their early growth and development to predictably make room for teeth or reduce overjet or give them the confidence in that smile early on that is very important these days. Those type things are what make the overall package of doing two phases, and the explanation to the parents, the education to the parents of why this is, it makes it a more enjoyable experience. And then they buy into it. I would say rarely do we have a second phase patient that doesn't need treatment, but we've educated them up front. We've given them the expectations of why we were doing what we're doing. There's still a whole other set of 12 to 16 teeth that need to come in before we, finish your bite correction. But we've got a good jump start on it, and we've given them something of value that's going to take them through these middle school and early high school years until we're ready to finish things off. So they've got that buy-in from the beginning. And, now with the liners, the thing is with the liners, we're not in as much control anymore. So we've got to change our mindset of really engaging that patient, engaging the parent to buy into what we're designing. And if we do that, we're going to have success. But that is a total switch that you've got to make this successful. Otherwise, liners don't work. And then you hear those out there that say they don't work. But, we're here to say that, we'd love to put our results up against, anybody when we can really connect with those patients. And I take lots of heart if we've had a breakdown in the communication. I think that's so critical to really use those times that we would have been bonding 7 to 7 in a chair, and they've got their mouth and a cheek retractor. We use that time to really hone in on whatever connection it is, and it could be through SDA. But you got to make those.
What's SDA? What's SDA, Dan?
Smile Doctors Anywhere, another technology that we've really we went all in on, and I would say that with that that monitoring and that connection with our patients along the digital sense, that's been a huge undertaking. And I'll be the first to say, before we joined Smile Doctors, I was sitting on the side saying, "Gosh, we could have this patient send us in pictures, and do we really need that? Is it really going to make it that much better?" And it's grown tremendously for us, and it's still growing, and we're trying to be better at it. But really back to keeping those touch points with the patients. I think once we lose that engagement, the success goes down. And I think we pride ourselves on really staying connected with the patients.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think what's funny is I'll often hear orthodontists, say, two-phase treatment, you could just do it in one. And when I ask those orthodontists, I go, did you treat your own children in one phase or two phases?
Mm-hmm.
And they then blush and say, well, two. And I said, why'd you do two? And when if they're really going to be honest, they say, because you get a better outcome and you don't burn the kid out in one phase or, a single treatment that goes for 2 years or plus.
Yeah.
And breaking it up, you get you get all the growth and development that you want, orthognatically and to lay that. And then also to go, well, let's address the aesthetics and get the teeth straight on the second phase. So, I'm totally with you.
And those are all true, Scott. And you can't underestimate the value of the self-confidence gained as well. Because we've never been a first phase practice that just did expansion and that was it. Right. I never understood not aligning the front teeth after expansion. You guys just going to leave someone with a little bit of diastema or rotated teeth. So those kids are formulating their self-confidence or self-esteem at a very early age. And if you can improve that and give them that little leg up in the classroom and interaction with friends and teachers and parents, it's definitely worth it to me. So I think you're spot on when you say most of us orthodontists are going to treat our own kids in two phases. Why wouldn't you treat everyone else the way you want to treat your own kid?
That's right. Does not everybody deserve the highest quality treatment that we can provide? I agree. I would go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, you brought up a good point. I think you mentioned earlier about, could you treat this in one phase? I say that so many times, but I think there's so much value to doing it in two phases. It's not like we're ever going to say that I couldn't treat this in one phase. I do think it gets more complex in many of the cases that we see early on. So making that point to the parents and educating them about what we're seeing here, we're trying to break it down into something that's, again, more predictable. It's not to also say that every patient that comes to the door is going to get treated. There's a lot of value in building some trust with the parent, and telling them, hey, let's see you in 6 months, or let's see how things are looking then, and then we can reevaluate. I think there's a lot of value to that too, and a lot of trust. But when we do feel like there's two phases are warranted, just so much value can be built into that, and the smiles really prove that.
I agree.
A lot of orthodontists will say that, well, two phases aren't as profitable. Well, we can make it profitable if you have your goals and you're in and out of treatment in a timely manner so that you're not burning out the patient. You're in there 12 months to begin with. You get your rest period, and then really your second phase should be very straightforward. And again, not another 12 months at the most. So you're taking the same amount of time that was a single phase case, and you're breaking it into two parts, and you haven't burned the patient out, and you've really gained so much in growth and through growth and development to make that second phase so much easier. And it can be profitable.
Yeah. I love what you said, Damon, about the mental change that takes place, especially around, there's patient's self-image. So one of my mentors, someone who's had just an incredible impact, and I should say two, who have had an incredible impact on me in the way I treat, are the Rinchus and so they're famous for their articles and research on how the psychosocial changes are greater than any other impact on occlusion or bite or TMJ or anything that takes place with orthodontics. And it's really the greatest impact is catching these kids at that age where they're able to develop their own thoughts about who they are, how they fit in socially with others. And the trouble is, yes, we could actually not do any orthodontics on kids and then treat them as adults. You can straighten teeth at any point, right? But the trouble is you can't go back and live through junior high and high school when those formative years of their identity is formed. And so it's one of the biggest effects that we have. It's actually why I love so much being an orthodontist. It is the greatest job in the world that we're able to straighten teeth, create smiles, but we also get to see these kids and patients over a period of time. So whether they're young adolescents, whether they're adults, we see the change in people take place. We get to be a part of that. We get to talk to them every 6, 8, 10 weeks and get to see them as they go through this. It is the best part of what we do, to see the possibility in people's lives and have them achieve that. So it is the best.
Absolutely.
So as you guys are going through, so your practice is now known among smile doctors for sure as one of the most efficient. What advice would you have for other orthodontists? How can they take steps to evaluate their practice, to move this way? What they're evaluating all sorts of technologies, given their markets. What advice would you have for them?
I would say don't be afraid to employ technology in your practice. I know technology is, whether it be CBCT or dental monitoring, 3D printers in your practice, there's a cost point to all those things, and which leads a lot of people to not wanting to seek those out. But there is a point in your volume where you do recoup those expenses and you're able to grow your practice, and the bottom line, the profitability part, is worth it all. So don't be afraid to employ technology. And when you do the technology, go all in. Dan alluded to earlier about how when we started with dental monitoring, we call it Small Doctors Anywhere. We didn't want to just do a little bit and try it out with a certain population of patients. We went all in with all of our patients. In addition, we then developed the dynamic scheduling as well. So that really was a game changer in creating open spaces in our schedules every day. That's really what led to us now having a more relaxed day and enjoying our day at the office. Now, granted, we're not seeing as many patients in the office as we used to. Maybe a day with Dan and I together, it's a 60 patient day, maybe 70 patient day, as opposed to 100, 120 patients. But that time is also spent on the backside, working up ClinChecks and monitoring the dental monitoring, the Smile Doctors Anywhere app. But it's a much more relaxed day. And the patients that we do see in the office, we're able to really give our full, all our focus to, and really connect with those patients on a daily basis. But go all in. Use the technology to your advantage. If you just use part of the technology, you're not going to get the full advantage. You really have to trust it.
It's great. It's great. Dan, what's your take?
Yeah, I would also add that in some of these things that, again, like Damon said, don't be afraid to use some of these things that others that may have already jumped in have used. But think of the sum of the parts. I always like the flywheel analogy. We've got so many different technologies, efficiencies, but you can't just choose one of those and be great at that and expect everything else to hum. You really need to have a top-down view and look at all these to make the whole system work. And I think we've chosen some of the best things to make it all work, whether it's from whatever appliance we choose to use, or the monitoring, the flow for lab, our practice management software, all those things. You got to be efficient in each of those to make the whole thing work together, and that's what it's going to spin. So, I also think, don't be afraid to reach out to others that have had success with these things. If you're sitting on the sidelines and, well, I don't know if that's going to work for me, reach out. Again, this is such a great network that we have, and we've both done that. We've opened up our doors to have others come in and check things out the way we do it. Not saying the way we do it is the best way to do it, because we're always learning. But those are the opportunities that we have as a whole to make it all kind of hum and work together.
I agree. I think it is an evolution that way, right? We learn more and more. Your practice is not the same practice it was even 6 months ago. You guys have picked up new things and are ever changing and evolving on behalf of the patient. So I love that.
We've talked a lot now about technology and products to increase efficiency, but the one thing we haven't really spoken about is training. And probably one of the biggest factors I would say in our efficiencies over the last 10 to 15 years is our focus on our team and training that team. We certainly want our team to understand why we're doing something and what we're doing, But if they understand those things, they're going to help you develop the how you do it. We've got a lot of smart people that work for us. And so we try to let them understand how we think. And it's amazing when you do that, they'll come up with these procedures and protocols to really help your efficiency. Um, Training is so important from the new patient call, how to handle that new patient call, how to follow up with pendings, how to be prepared at chairside when the doctor gets there. We've spent a lot of time on the doctor handoff, which I think is so important for efficiency. For so many years, I would come to the chair, I would strain to look at the chart and act to the patient like I knew what was going on, and try to pick up on a few signals. Okay, what did we do last time? What's going on with this patient? And we sat there for 5 minutes when I should be really just interacting with that patient, establishing connection. So now what we do, we trained our team members. By the time we get to the chair, they know exactly what's going on, the highlights of that patient. They know what was done last visit, what needs to be done this visit. So when we get there, when Dan and I show up, we're connecting with the patient for that 1 to 2 minutes, talking about what's going on in their life, some awesomeness in their lives. And then we turn very calmly to our chairside clinician. And she tells us everything that's kind of going on, the highlights of the patient. And that really helps that transition. And we're much more efficient when we know that information chairside.
I agree with you.
I'm going to say a shout out to Dr. Adcox and you, Scott, because I think when we came and we visited Harker Heights, that was one of the first and the biggest takeaways that we took from there was getting patient awesomeness and seeing the handoff that was happening there. And that has stuck with us. And that's a very valuable thing that we can take from visiting each other's practices or, reaching out. But that's been awesome, and it certainly leads to the efficiency and the personalization of that time that we have with that patient. Again, a lot of times those times are smaller now because we have very short appointments in there. So anything that the team can do to help us be efficient is the way to go.
100%. I think, like you said, Damon, I remember the days when I would go before we got efficient. It was arrive at the chair, pull open. I would click, open up all the initial records and go through everything and then diagnose the case again in my brain of what should be what, and looking through any notes, what notes were made, what are we doing on this treatment? What promises did I make? Then look in the mouth to try and do the math. Are we on track? Are we behind? Whatever. Oh my goodness. And the mental gymnastics you have to go through and smile all the way. Mom's at the feet of the chair asking you questions at the same time. You're trying to fake like you got it going on. It's like, I just enough of that. Once we realize that the greatest abilities of the doctor are the things that we cannot delegate, right? And so that is relationships with mom and the patient and the general dentist, and then also overseeing that the treatment be done correctly. And so the rest, if we can document and we can empower the team around us to set that up, then it works great. So I want to, just like you said, I want to arrive to the chair. I want to talk with the patient, talk with mom, connect with them. That's how you build a practice. And then have the assistant say, okay, hey, here's what we have planned today. This is what was done. This is what we have planned next visit. And then I get to check it out and make sure that it's on track exactly like I want. And I love it. It's so much better, and life goes so much easier that way.
And it takes time for that to develop too. That doesn't happen in one training session, one retreat with your team. It's training, it's retraining, and of course you have new people coming into your practice all the time. Yeah. You got to maintain that culture of training, and so we really want our people to think. And not just do what we tell them to do. They need to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And oftentimes they'll catch things that you don't catch. There's another set of eyes, a mini orthodontist at the chair, if you will. That's why, like our TCs, we train our TCs to think like we do. So by the time we're ready to step into that new patient exam, they've already diagnosed the case. They're just checking with us to make sure their diagnosis is correct. They've already talked to the patient about what they think we're going to recommend. So we're in there just reconfirming their original thoughts. And it really makes the flow of the day go much quicker when you have people there thinking like you are.
Yeah. You said the phrase I love. It's a mini residency program. And when you have that mentality as a doctor, when you arrive to the chair that you want to teach everyone on the team to think like an orthodontist, then it works really well. I initially got that phrase from Jeff Kozlowski. That was just how he ran his clinic. And I thought, oh, that is a brilliant way to do it, and see how we can take that and potentially improve on it. And that's what we've done. So when do you guys find time to train? When do you guys do that? When would you guys train in the morning, all throughout the day? Is it certain days? What do you guys do?
Well, I'll be perfectly honest. That's a work in progress. Training time has been something that we try to carve out on the schedule. Mm-hmm. We always think we need more of it, but with the seemingly hustle and bustle and time off and getting everybody together, it's a challenge. We're trying to make that better. I think one of the biggest pieces is communication with our team, and making sure that everybody is getting the same message and they're hearing it multiple times so they get it. But we're trying to carve out time when we look ahead. I think it starts with looking ahead and putting those specific items, having a good leader in there in the clinic that can really see that vision to carry out what we want to see, and then reinforce it to make us all accountable. But it is definitely, we first admit that is one of the biggest challenges with the ever-changing dynamics of the team to get that all together in the training. But we're trying to work forward with that.
Go ahead, Damon.
I was going to say, the way we've set up the hierarchy in our practice, we have our practice director, and then we have several leads throughout the office, whether it be the concierge lead, we have the lab lead, we have the clinical lead. And so each of those teams will meet on a consistent basis, at least once or twice a month. Of course, each of those leads will meet with us doctors to formulate plans or to update any protocols, but they will meet on a consistent basis. We do have a huddle every morning where we talk about immediate needs. We do at least a monthly full team meeting. And then we do at least once a year a retreat where we get together, not only for some fun, but to really nail down the protocols and procedures. We have a procedure list of every single thing we do, and it's all written down. So if we have a new employee, we have a manual they can go to if they want to look at a certain procedure. It's written down clearly what exactly that we expect out of that. But you're right. You get away from it in the busyness of the day, and sometimes you have to you notice something chair side, you just have to pull that team member aside and say, you know what, I noticed what you're doing, and not in a. So we always say Q-tip on the table. Quit taking it personally. This is not personal. This is all about business. And this is, I noticed, and for the benefit of the patients, I would like you to maybe modify the way you do this a little bit. So it's training in the moment, but also we do set aside some time, but try to always create more time for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think as I look at it, those big, if all we did was just a monthly training or a quarterly training, we would be terrible, because it's all about daily execution, implementation, right? And so I had the privilege to go on a retreat with Jocko Willink and a bunch of his SEALs, right? And so got to meet with them, and one of the things that he spoke about was training, and often the best trainings are those that just pop up, just take place, spur of the moment. And it's those that potentially it could be each time you come to the chair where there's slight modifications or little things just to bring people up to speed, where your morning huddle is one to say, hey, today we're going to focus on this, this aspect of the process. And then that's what everybody tries to improve that day. And so day by day, just little layer upon layer, we get better and better. I've often found that those morning meetings, the monthly meetings where we get everybody together, it's more or less to introduce the concept and to have people understand the big picture, but then the details come daily, just in daily practice and implementation. And so that's been the way that I have found things most effective, especially at home with my kids. Right. So when we have whatever, it takes reinforcement all the time to get them to do what we need them to do. And then it's also a lot of fun to empower one of them to say, hey, I want you're in charge of the kitchen and you get to tell me and everybody else what to do on how to keep this clean. And just to make sure that it's to the standard. And it's a lot of fun to watch them grow and do things. Same thing applies in all areas of our life, especially in practice. So
absolutely
super cool.
It's got, the part about empowering the team, I think they feel so much better about themselves. And if we just go up and ask them a question, I often will ask them, well, what would you do? Whether it's the TC or if it's a chair side, maybe they've given us a great report. They're here for archwires, ask them what they would do, get them thinking. And I think they feel a lot more, they take a lot more pride and also feel a lot more important that we've done that. And I think I've really seen a change in our treatment coordinator since we've really started to ask them, I already had the case together for us. And it really goes a long way.
Right. Yeah. Right. Or to point out differences between the way you two operate, to be like, hey, now I do it this way. Is this how all the doctors do it? Or what do I need to do to change to make life more efficient for you and make the process easier on you? And that's when your team member like takes a step back to go, oh, wow. Wow. We're just trying, it's all about the process that's being improved rather than just make it most easy for the doctor. It's pretty cool then when you're all about the patient shifting that way.
And Dan, one of the things I would say about our practice is, Dan and I have never been our idea very dogmatic about the way things have to proceed in our practice. We've always been open-minded to want their ideas. And partnerships can be difficult too, because you are two different people and sometimes you have different ideas, but you have to put ego aside and really understand what's best for the patient and sometimes we have to compromise, both of us. I think Dan and I both will say that we've definitely compromised and usually we come to a consensus at the end. But we definitely involve our team in those decision-making processes. Like for instance, when we went to dental monitoring, all of our patients, we were still learning as doctors about how the technology could work in our practice. We designated a virtual care coordinator in our office, and she ran with it. We empowered her to develop the systems and the strategies for us to really not have patients fall through the cracks in our schedule because we weren't seeing them in office anymore. And she really developed and took ownership of that responsibility. And you've got creative people in your office. Use them to your advantage. I mean, that if anything else, I would say, use them and don't be naive and don't be aloof and thinking you have all the answers.
That's great. I have so much admiration for you guys. Just as you're telling us about how you came to be a partnership, Damon, just you recognizing the need for someone who had strengths opposite you. Dan, you having the vision to be like, hey, I'm going to jump into this practice and see where I can add and I can grow. You guys are just such a great example of that. Of as you mentioned, Damon, the yin and the yang, right? Of opposite strengths in order to achieve something greater. And I see what you've done. I see how you've worked, and you guys are just phenomenal partners. It's why it's been such a blessing to Smile Doctors to see the ideas that you've brought and the ways that you're constantly looking to improve and evolve on behalf of the patient to deliver the highest level of service that you can with them, the greatest outcomes. You guys are just incredible partners, and I'm thankful for the podcast today and the ideas that you shared with us.
Well, thanks, Scott. It's been an amazing journey here. Not only joining the practice with Damon and working with our team, but ultimately working with Smile Doctors and all the resources that we have here. It's certainly taken us to another level, and who knows what the levels are beyond this. So really appreciative of that as well. And thanks for taking the time to, allowing us to share this with you.
It's exciting. We'll see what we achieve together. So it'll be great.
Just at our Christmas party the other day, we talked about how, we thanked our team. It's been 4 years now since we've been with Smile Doctors almost, and taking that leap of faith with us. Many of those original team members that were here when we made the announcement are still with us. And they're happy. It's been a great ride for them. And we appreciate Smile Doctor's, ability to put the technologies in our hands to become more and more efficient. And, we're still a work in progress, as most people are. But I think we're doing things for the betterment of our team, our patients. And I feel like we're really enjoying our practice now more than ever. And we go home and we can they have that energy still left to give back to our families. And that's been really the true value, I think, in when we joined Smile Doctors, getting that time back and that energy back to really live our best lives.
That's awesome. Awesome. You guys are great. And thank you for joining us today. All right.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.